show up early this morning and be my guinea pig. So I'm going to show you how I foil like a half head, like what I consider for me like to just be a classic half head. It's sort of like my bread and butter in terms of foiling. And so we'll put all the foils in and then we'll take like a quick break just while the last section is processing, and then I'll have her like rinsed and ready to show you how I'm going to glaze her. Or tone. There are a couple words that I do use a little bit differently, but they essentially mean the same thing. So I just spent the last 5 years using the word glaze instead of tone, so something like that. And if I talk about like a base color, I'll usually say a single process. That's kind of how that goes. And I'll say process instead of process because they beat the Canadian out of me while I was in the US. So yeah, so like Eliza said, I just spent the last few years in New York. I was a stylist in Vancouver here for like 10 years prior to that. And I'm very, very glad to be back, and the change of pace is so lovely. Oh, it's so wonderful. I love this city, even when it rains. Okay, so one thing I'll just say real quick about the way I foil. And there, as we know, there's 1,000 million trillion ways to do what we all do. The way that I do it is not necessarily the right way. I don't think there's a wrong way to do anything. This is just the way that I do it. And I'll explain to you why I do what I do. And hopefully this will kind of inspire you guys to try something a little bit different. So the way that I sectioned this off, and I'm gonna do my best to kind of like work back and forth so that everyone can see. But if you have trouble seeing and you know, if you need to stand up or something without blocking everyone, you're more than welcome to move around a little. Or if you really need to see something I'm doing, just ask me and I'll like turn so that you can see. Cool? So I always start with this kind of diamond shaped section here in the crown area. And the way I sort of section this off is with the rounds of the head. So what this is gonna do is this is all gonna cascade over everything underneath here, and that's gonna cover all of this. So really this stuff underneath doesn't need to be highlighted like every time. A lot of my clients, I only do a full, honestly, like maybe once or twice a year, depending on the look that they're going for. But I personally like when there's a bit more depth underneath here anyways. I feel like it just keeps it a bit softer and a bit more natural. And sometimes what I'll do too is, we might do this today actually, once the foils are in, you can paint some of these pieces underneath here just to create like a little bit more brightness underneath. But this is like my classic, and this is what we call a diamond pattern. And so for her hair today, I'm going to be using two formulas. I'm going to use a lightner with 20 volume for her, and then I'm also going to be using a high lift with 40 vol. Do you guys work with high lift a lot? Yeah? Yeah, I love working with high lifts when I'm doing like foil highlights, because I feel like it just helps give like just a little bit more dimension even when they want to be super bright. There's something that happens to the eye when you just have different tones going on. Even if they're really close to each other, it just creates, I think, a little bit more of a natural effect. I mean, I still do like just lightner highlights too, because sometimes you just want to be mega super blonde, and that's awesome. But I think it's nice to kind of throw something in there in the mix. Oh yeah, it might be good for me to grab my color. So I'm using L'Oreal. Does anyone here use L'Oreal color? Yeah, some. What else do you guys use? Yeah? Oh, cool, yeah. So I just came off of 4 years of using Goldwell, and I was like, I'm gonna move to a city where I have no clients and do chair rental and do a brand new color line that I've never worked with before. Super great idea. So it's been fun learning a brand new color line that I pay for myself, so that's great. So what I'm doing for her highlight is I'm using a combination of a violet based and a neutral base. Because she's pretty light to begin with, I don't feel, going based on this, that there's going to be a lot to deal with as it's lightening in terms of controlling tone. So I don't necessarily want to go in with like the ashiest thing as possible, because I want to leave some of her kind of like natural remaining pigment in there to play with. Okay, where is going to be the best? Okay, so I'm going to do half of it facing this way, and then when I get through, then I'm going to turn the other way so you guys can kind of see. Does that sound okay? Cool. So I do a lot of slicing when I highlight because I like the effect that it gives. What do I do with my other comb? But I find for in these back sections, a lot of time I will weave this because this is coming straight off the back, so it can be a little bit harder to keep it blended, and the last thing you want is, or I shouldn't assume, but I would say a lot of times we don't want to have super strong stripy highlights coming off the back of the head. So I will weave these. And I'm doing kind of like a medium weave. Because I take pretty fine sections, I don't necessarily need to do super fine baby lights because they might also disappear a little bit too. So for me, the subsection being nice and fine is what's going to help me create a softer look. Yeah, so I foil from the top down. Does anyone here foil from the top down? Cool. So I had never done that before until I moved to New York, and they retrained me, and my first set of foils doing them this way were pretty much atrocious. My instructor, Kelly, who is amazing and very patient, just came over and was, okay, so we're gonna work on these. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I thought it was very strange, but what I sort of learned from this and why I foil this way is because once this is out of the way, when I go to do all these highlights that are coming down here, I have all this surface to press against. So for me, I find I still do foil from the hairline up. Sometimes there's just certain scenarios in which that's gonna work the best for me. But I find that having all this, I can get them in more snug and keep them more tight, and I'm not pressing on the previous highlights. So I'm less likely to get bleeding. Because for me, I'm pretty yanking it in there, and when I'm pushing against a highlight that's in there, it's gonna slip a little bit. But for me, I feel like it's just nice because it just gets everything out of the way so I can just see what's going on. So these are coming at a diagonal across the back because we know about diagonals, they create more softness, right? So you're gonna get a little bit more blend coming at an angle like this. It's totally fine if you only flip it once and crease your edges in, obviously do what you gotta do. I just find for me that having that second fold really helps keep them from slipping. Especially if you are gonna do a single process or a base color in between the highlights. That way you're not gonna get any slippage when the color is hanging out on the foils.
Are you alternating between highlights and lightner?
In the back here, I'm doing a little bit more high lift than I am doing lightner. I'm doing 2-to-1. And then when I get to the front, I'll switch to equal. And then as I get to the hairline in the very front, then I'm gonna probably just drop out the high lift and just do lightner to keep her really bright around her face. Do you guys generally subsection or do you foil off the scalp? Great. Sometimes if I'm in a really big hurry, I'll foil off the scalp because let's be honest, it's really fast. For me though, like I see some people do it and they're like amazing at it and it's so perfect and that's great. For me, I find that I just get the cleanest result if I do subsection. Sometimes you just don't feel like it and that's totally okay. So her ends are pretty light, so I'm not pulling the lightener through. But when there is a little bit of color in here that I do want to lighten a little bit, just pulling these ends up and just brushing some color on. Because I'm like not trying to fry her little ends. Are you guys still doing a lot of foil highlights or are you doing a lot of balayage? Yeah. Do you miss doing lots of foils or where's everyone? No. It's so interesting to me because I love to foil. I don't know, it's like, you know those like little Japanese like Zen gardens? That's what this feels like to me when I foil. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I do a lot of combination of foiling and hair painting or balayage. For me, I feel like there's just certain looks that you can get with foil highlights that I personally can't get with balayage, so it's what's comfortable for me. I did the other day. I think it took me maybe an hour 45, 2 hours, but it was like 90 something highlights, so. She was like, how many highlights do you think are in here? Like 60? And I was like, yeah, that looks about right. And then we counted them and we're like, oh, cool. So that's a lot more than that. And I was like, that's why I'm super parched and my legs want to fall off. So cool. So when you guys are highlighting or coloring or whatever, do you stick to one developer and rinse in sections, or are you switching developers so that you rinse it all at once? Switching. Okay, cool. So I rinse in sections. That's just because that's just how I do it. The idea of switching developers, I'm like, I don't know how that works. That's so confusing to me. So I'm not going to change developers, just in case you're wondering. I think what's really nice about foiling like this as well is that if you are also needing to low light, this is really great because once these are clipped up out of the way, now I can go back through with this stuff that's in between and add low lights in there. So if I'm really trying to blend out like some previous highlights and I'm trying to make them a much more like rooty, softer kind of blonde, this is really great because then you can go back through and just paint on like some demi, like almost like a base color in between. Or if you need more dimension in your ends, you can take this whole section and just weave this out and then put your low light in here. And that's really nice because then everything will just lay like really flat on itself and then you don't disturb it too much. Also too, this is a really good time if you want to paint the ends a little bit too. Then all this that just sticks out, you can paint a little bit on here. Let's just do that. This is especially great for, you know, the blondes that are always like, I want to be blonder. And you're like, so how do you propose doing that? Because you're already so blonde. But sometimes it's just that dullness in the ends that they are seeing, not even so much that it's not light enough. This is great if you just want to clear out a little bit of whatever's built up in their hair. And you can use something really soft, like even just 10 volume, you know, because then they'll feel like you've done something, which it does, you know, it'll do something, but then you don't have to worry about doing too much and taking too long and doing more than you actually need to do. Wear gloves, even though I'm not. So when I've done this, I've painted one. I've painted basically the hair between two foils, leaving out one foil. Painting, this one was one because it was a little bit heavier, then we'll leave one out, and then we'll paint this one underneath here. We'll paint these two actually.
Ali, how do you decide which direction you take your diagonal section? Is it just like comfort level or where they started?
Like from here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So how do I decide if they're gonna come this way or they're gonna come this way? Because I'm right-handed, it's easier for me to come down this way than it is for me to come like scooping up. But if they do have, if that's just the way their hair lays, you look at it and you're like, okay, well clearly I need to come the other direction, then that's what you do. Because if it splits really heavily here and you're putting them this way, then when it splits, you're gonna get a really strong line coming this way. So it's better to just go a little bit softer and have them come off this way. So if they've got a really strong kick right here, I'll do like almost like a baby light first, just so that when it does split, nothing looks too heavy. But if they don't have a really strong split, it's just whatever is comfortable for my hand. There it is. And so that's the back, and there goes my tray. Okay, so now we're gonna work into the sides. So when I do a half highlight, that is everything in the crown that's going to cover the back. That's everything through the top section. And then when I go to highlight the underneath for the sides, I take out basically this sort of face framing section here. And then this I leave because this is all going to be covered. And then again, this is going to create a little bit more depth in here, which I'm a big fan of. Okay, are we doing okay so far in terms of you guys being able to see? Okay, cool. I'm trying to do my best. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here now is with this first section, I'm gonna take this first bit of hair out because I want to, I don't wanna have these highlights touching because if you have them touching right here, you're gonna have like a nice big bold highlight right on the round of the head, which probably don't want. So I'm going to weave this first one. And I'm going to start with the high lift. Just because I want to make sure that transition there from the back to the sides is really soft.
So is your top section there, like the half of your top section to her natural part? Is that what's happening?
Here?
What you're starting now?
Oh, so, okay, so in terms of like what I'm doing side to side.
Yeah.
So, okay, great question. So I split her right down the center. She said that she does part her hair in the center, or she'll part it a slight bit off to one side. Usually I highlight down the center like this because I feel like the way that I can get close to the rounds of the head is the best for me to get them in really tight. If they have a super, super deep side part, then I will go off the side. But if they're kind of like, yeah, whatever, then I'll go down the center. The other thing that you can do too is if you go down the center, but they're like, I do part it on the side a little bit, then that's where with your glazing, you can kind of create that side part a little bit. Do you guys do like roots and end glazes? Like root shadowing or root smudging or whatever? So that's really nice. Even if you're doing it just a little bit, like let's say you're doing a 10 on your ends and doing a 9 at the root area, that's when you can foil down the center, and then when you go to do the glaze, you can put their hair into the parting that, like where they parted at, and then that's going to give you more of that side parted look. Does that make sense? So if she's got a, let me find I've got kind of a side part here. Okay, so if I've highlighted down the center, but she's a side part, when I go to put the darker glaze at the root, I'm gonna have it come to the rounds here, and then I'm gonna have it come a little bit further here, because that's where it parts. Yeah? Cool.
And then if this client likes to wear like the half top knot or do that, would you extend the one panel by the ear and add more?
For sure. Yeah. If I felt like the way that she was gonna wear it, I was like, oh, I need a few more. Absolutely, I'll put it in. I think especially if she has like a darker base, you might need a few more just to kind of blend that in. And when they're a little bit on the lighter side, and especially because it's like summertime now, you know, leaving a little bit more of her natural I think will be nice, because if she is wearing it up, it'll get a little bit lighter by itself. And so, oh yeah, go ahead.
So sorry, what I was going to say is, so then what would you do if, like, because you've left out right in front of the ear, you're sectioning that, and you've left out the piece above the ear, would you just put a few in, just do that?
Yeah, so when I get to that side, I can show you exactly where I would go if I was gonna do like a full highlight. Yeah, just remind me in case I forget.
Are the sections you're leaving out in between the same size as the piece of hair you're foiling?
They're a little bit wider. If you wanted to go for like almost solid, then I would say keep them about the same size. Yes. Yeah, so I did that first highlight was a weave, the first foil was a weave, and then after that I've switched to just slicing. Mm-hmm. I like to slice because I feel like it gives a bit more of like an illuminated look, because you're getting like a sheet of color, as opposed to when you weave, it's going to be a bit more dimensional. One is not better than the other, one's not right, one's not wrong. It's just the kind of look that you're going for. Like, would I still slice her?
Yeah, would you still slice her?
Yeah. Because with slicing too, I feel like you're taking this really fine, thin section, which means your product is going to get through the hair really well. So if you're trying to put a lot of lightness in the hair and you're taking these really fine sections and then you're also weaving them out, I feel like you end up having to do almost more to create enough lightness in the hair.
That was my question too about amount of product you're using, because I feel like when I foil, I spend like a minute pushing the product through. So like, am I getting it?
Yeah, and so when you take super fine sections, then you like don't have to worry as much if it's going through.
Will you do back-to-back slices at all, or?
So if I do a back-to-back slice, so you mean back-to-back meaning that there's no hair in between?
Yeah.
That's gonna give me like a much wider highlight. So if I were to do back-to-back, I would most likely do them with a weave so that there was some hair left out. Can you mix for me? The oligo in 20, I just need it to be not as thick as this is.
Not a second.
Yeah, so you can do like,
More to this though?
just a new bowl is fine. Can you do like 30 to 35 developer?
Okay.
Thank you. So as I get a little bit closer up to the front, I'm gonna like snug them in together just a little bit more. Just so that she'll feel a little bit brighter. And yeah, exactly. Snug them up. That's a technical scientific term. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, the money piece. So the angle that I've taken with these, with her sections, I'll show you as I take this up. It's mimicking like what her hairline is, right? So this angle here is pretty much the same as what this angle is here. And then this way, this is gonna stay really nice and soft. So I can pack him in here at the front, but because it's going with her natural parting or with her natural hairline, it's gonna be really soft. Yeah, totally. That's the other thing like that I like a lot about slicing is it's quick. So you're just like, you just take the piece, put some lightner on it, move on, you know? Because really it's all about the size of your subsection and the angle that you're taking. If I take a really fine subsection, but I'm coming straight across the top of the head, it's gonna be a little bit harder for a slice to blend really softly because you have a horizontal line coming off of a round shape, right? But when you're putting this angle in, then it's coming at a diagonal and it's softly coming through the hair, you know?
I remember it blew my mind when you told me you like pretty much only slice. Your highlights look so soft. Like if I sliced, I feel like it would look like straight lumpy. Like, yeah.
Yep, it's just all about the angle.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And when you're applying your product to your foil,
Mm-hmm.
it's like where are you starting? And then I saw you did a little tappy or something.
Yeah, so I start about like an inch away. I mean, it depends on how much root they have, right? Obviously they just have a little bit, you're just gonna tap it in. But I generally start away and then with what's ever left on the brush, then I sort of work that up into the, closer to the scalp area. If you start with all your product right at the scalp area, that's probably gonna end up on the scalp instead of in the foil.
Does it make it softer after right close to the
scalp, or does it still penetrate all the way through?
It does usually keep it a little bit softer without it being like, oh, did you not put as much product there? You know, because the hair that's as close to the scalp like that is a little bit softer, and then also, you know, the heat from the scalp, blah, blah, blah. So that's gonna make sure that it's lightening. What it's just ensuring is that we don't have any bleeders.
You're still going for full saturation right to the
Yeah. Fingers crossed, but now that I've said that, I'm probably gonna get a little bit of bleed mark today. Just kidding, it's gonna be great. Yeah. And this too is like when it's really important, the way that you're locking your foils. So I have the crease go underneath so that when I lift this up, I can push that all the way underneath. And then I go right to the edge of this subsection and then fold it in. So I'm not giving it any room for it to like move around. Obviously there's enough for it to move around so that I can flip them up, but they're not gonna hang off the hair. And like there's just some natural like slippage that happens with foils, but when they're really tight to begin with like this, then the little bit that they do move is not gonna make a huge difference.
And what weight of foils are you using? 'Cause I feel like a heavy
Never
weight-
ask a foil how much it weighs. These ones are the foil-lit, like the pop-up ones that come out in the long sheet and I rip them in half, so they're like medium. What do you guys foil with?
Like,
Yeah. I feel like I'm too aggressive for light. I feel like when I use the light ones, I end up like just ripping them, and my giant man hands are like, I'm just gonna rip these to 1,000 pieces. It's like not cool. So then I am going to put a tiny little guy in the front here. But what I'm going to use for this, because like she has these like little baby hairs, instead of using a lightener on baby hairs, which will make it like so light that it's probably going to be clear, I'm going to end with the high lift. A lot of times, if they're like a lighter base, I like to end just that very last one in the front with a high lift, because I feel like it's just a little bit softer around the face. And if you have this like little teeny tiny guy that you're like, I'm nervous that it's like not gonna be able to stay in because like it's a bit shorter, so there's almost like not enough product, like not enough hair spread out on the foil, what I'll do is I'll double lock it. So that just means I crease it out here first, and then I take it to the end of the subsection and fold it in again. It's not gonna go anywhere. That's really good too for if you are putting a single process in between, double locking them. It's super annoying, you're like, I don't have time for this. But the end result, if you double lock when there's gonna be product in between that's gonna pull it down, they don't move, which is great.
But we've also saved time because we're slicing, not we.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what I'm gonna do in here now, so when I look at her hairline, to me, she has from here to here, and then she has this little bit above it. So if I were to put a foil all the way from here to here, I feel like that might be a bit too wide because of the round of her head that's right here. So what I do in here is I take a horizontal foil. So I'm just gonna take out a little bit of hair just to sort of clean out that line. Right, so now we have like a nice clean section here. So then I'm going to take this horizontal subsection that's not quite touching this back foil here. We're still leaving a little bit of space. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to weave this, because if I put a slice in here, it might be a bit rough. So what I like to do with this is just kind of try and match up where these guys are. So all these foils that I have here, I'm going to do a pickup kind of for each one of those. Because in that way, when they fall down, there's like some cohesion between this and this. If I just all of a sudden took 3 big pieces, it might not blend with what I was doing before. And this, for sure, you want to make sure that you're taking a nice fine section, because now we are working on like a horizontal as opposed to a diagonal. So don't make a mess out of your foil like that. Just keep them nice and smooth. And you can see, like, I'm sort of using my hand like as a board. Do you guys ever foil with a board? That's pain. For a while I was like, I only highlight with a board. I don't know what I was doing, but that was like really annoying, because you can just use your hand. Okay, so now if I wanted to fill in all this space back here, I would just start here. So I would have this sectioned out like this was part of the back. And then I would just start in here with the diagonal and just follow this all the way down. Cool? Another thing that you can do too, if you want to fill this in a little bit more, but you don't need as many as you would get in from coming in this, you can sort of pivot around. So you could take your neck section, like I would take a little bit more of a diagonal in here, put one in, start my next one just close to the edge of that, pivot it down, so you're just sort of like pinwheeling them around. So you're still leaving some depth in back here, but then you're also putting in a bunch of highlights. Does that make sense? Cool. So now for this, I'm going to go from like the edge of these here and foil this forward. You want to be really careful with these like little baby hairs around the hairline too. Sometimes they like to sneak their way into somewhere where they don't belong. And I feel like as you're getting close to the front, it's really important that you're keeping really clean sections, because that's what everyone's going to look at. So sometimes when those ends of the baby hairs get stuck in the foil where they're not supposed to be, you don't get the root of the baby hair, but you just get the ends, and so then you just get that weird like just lightness on the ends. So a lot of times too, I'll use those like pin curl clips are great when you just need a tiny little bit of hair clipped out of the way. Those are great because they'll hold on to small amounts of hair and they won't weigh it down at all. Our bodies are machines, and you need to take good care of them so that you can do this forever and ever and ever. And I know that I'm guilty a lot of like tipping my whole body, but it's like, you know, you don't want to make your client like uncomfortable, but it's uncomfortable for 5 minutes, and you have to do this all day, so. So I'm just just a crazy rebel, and I'll use it on everything, I don't care. You just have to know what's gonna happen. So high lift has a lot of pigment in it. And so that's why you get like lift and tone. But just know that if you are using it on a darker base, you're not gonna get as much control. But for me, in a lot of the way that I work, I like to keep people kind of almost as if like what their hair would lift naturally. So I will lift like really dark bases like 4s with high lift, because I feel like it doesn't lift beyond where it should when you're trying to create a little bit more of like a natural look in dark hair, right? So it is obviously gonna come up really warm, but it's not gonna come up so warm and so bright that it's really hard to control. I feel like the end result ends up being a little bit softer. I find with lightner, sometimes it can be a little bit like you just lift too much, you know? I guess it would just depend on what the final result was. If I'm going for like really light and really controlled, then I'm probably not gonna use high lift if I'm trying to get them super light. If I'm going for a little bit more natural, then I'll use a high lift. Does that make sense? Cool. So this last little guy here, I did like a little baby weave on that just so that I don't give her like too strong of a highlight right there in the front. Bless you. Okay, so I'm gonna give her another little painted piece here.
Do you ever back home?
Yep. Yeah, I like to back home. For these, when I'm just adding a little bit in, just to create a little bit of pop, I generally don't back home. I just make sure I'm really careful with my blending here. But if I'm doing like a lot of painted pieces, I do like to back home. Especially on really, really straight hair. For me, I feel like back combing works great. What do you guys do? Do you back home or just blend the crap out of it? Yeah. You spend like 18 minutes just like blending like one section of hair. So worth it though when you rinse it and you're like, remember when I spent all that time blending that piece? So I do like a little crease here to keep these popped up just so that it's keeping it out of her face. I feel like it's a nice thing to do. And if you were trying to create like a lot of lightness in here, then for sure I'd either like put it into foil or I would wrap it in plastic. But she's pretty light and I'm just trying to get like a little pop, so. I did not take a before photo because sometimes I don't think about what I'm doing, so. Yeah. As soon as I started putting in the highlights, I was like, oh, cool, way to be, Ali. Why are you like this? Cool, so that is her right side.
You're a wizard.
So just like as a personal backstory to that, so the salon I was working at previously, we booked back to back. So we had the color department and the cutting department, and we all had assistants. So everything that I did had to be done in an hour, because then that gave them an hour for processing and glazing, and then they would go downstairs and get a haircut, or my assistant would blow dry. So I don't know about you guys, but I can't do a full head of 90 foils in an hour. But you just had to, which means you were always running behind all the time and feeling really bad, because when you run behind, then that means you are throwing everyone else's day off too. So not only are you throwing your day off, but you're ruining everyone's day. So when I first moved back, I was still kind of like, I gotta get these foils in. And then I was like, oh, cool, you work for yourself now, so do whatever you want. So then I started like really slowing down. So everything was like taking me a bit longer, but I think I was just kind of like decompressing from what I had just come from. And also I was like, oh, maybe you need to slow down so that you can actually learn this color line, you know? And once I realized like, okay, cool, I can slow down. Then like I did a half highlight. It took me like an hour and a half to put it in. I was like, what are you doing? So, I mean, what do you guys usually do for a half? Do you guys book back to back, or do you book out completely for your client?
We're back to back.
Yeah, you book back to back.
I find I can book back to back with balayage, but with highlights it takes me so much longer, so I don't like it.
Yeah, yeah. I had a client ask me one day, she was like, oh, do you like miss having an assistant because now you have to do all your own shampoos? And I was like, I actually really like to shampoo. 15 years into the industry and I still am like, I just like it. I don't know why, it's weird.
That is weird.
I know.
Shady telephone. But then you end up in the fetal position in the back of the salon because your back hurts.
Yeah, true story. So I find when I've moved on to the left side, because I am right-handed, coming from here to the center, it throws me off a little bit. So I have to constantly kind of check in with what I'm doing. So I will, every few foils or so, I pick up this whole section and just make sure that my angle is the right, because I end up dropping this way a little bit because it's easier to come straight up than it is to come at an angle. So I'll find like, I'm like, and then these end up like a bit more like vertical as opposed to diagonal. So just every so often, just pick it up and just check your line. You're like, cool.
Do you try to match up like the inside, like foil to foil, so that like kind of creates a V, or do you normally do like staggered? Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense.
Okay.
I'm like, how do I answer this properly? I just highlight. So I feel like I end up staggering them a little bit, just because for me, and this is real talk, I feel like it's like just impossible for me to make them line up exactly. It's going to take me way too long. That's just real behind the chair talk. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we'll go with. Softness, stagger them for softness. And then if sometimes they do line up, that's also okay too.
Do you leave any hair out right over that center part?
That I don't. That'll just, that I'm gonna do, just gonna leave it like this. If I'm highlighting like this direction down, I will leave a little bit in between the two on either side of the part, just so I don't end up with too much highlight there. But for this, I just go right up to it. Do you guys have your favorite kind of foils, or do you just use like whatever, or do you rip them off, or do you have the pre-cut ones? Yeah. Oh yeah, I saw that one today when I was at West Coast. I was like, what's up with the extreme soft? Is that just like really, really light?
But we always say medium. It's
Oh.
a smoother, smoother texture.
Okay. So the actual surface, the surface of the foil is smooth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Until whenever the store runs out when we get the pre-cut ones, we're all like, oh, how do I get through this package of foils?
I can't cut them myself because I just can't be trusted. They all end up like all different lengths, and like some would be super long and some are super short, and it just like makes me crazy. So basically it would be smarter if I cut them myself, because I feel like they're a lot cheaper that way, but sometimes you gotta pay a little more so you don't pull your hair out. It's the little things, you know? Some of my coworkers rip foils, and I'm like, how do you get them all to be the same? It's like, I don't know, you just pull them out the same every time. I'm like, okay, cool, that's great. You guys ever use like different colors of foil when you're doing stuff so that you don't forget what you've just put in? That's a really handy one. Sweet meshes. Is that the cream colored ones or the white ones? Because I have two kinds of foamy ones. Yeah. Yeah, I like those. Yeah. I think that it does, for me personally. I just feel like it just grips it better so that they don't slide. I feel like for me, when I use like just smooth foils, I feel like I do get a little bit more slippage.
that is what I feel like is the thing. I bothered and tried to wash them once and then just ended up throwing them all out after because I was like, I can't do that.
The washing machine in laundry bags, and then the girls lay the 15 towels in the
Yeah.
Okay, so that or like in your water bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, and you do need to do a little bit.
But then how do you dry them?
We have
Are
a
there-
wire.
we
Nice
don't have to wire.
towel.
Like never?
You'll ruin your walls.
Well, that's,
And your
yeah,
toilets.
yeah. That's, I was like, I don't think this is good for the drywall.
Especially dry.
Who uses them? And, okay, yeah.
It's like the next year, the one day I did some literally all of it. And I sometimes
It just seems like a lot of work. And, yeah.
So what do you guys use for your foiling combs? Do you use these like little pin ones or do you use the thicker ones? Yeah. I use these YS Park ones. I love them so much.
Where do you get those ones?
Wherever there's a YS Park retailer near you. Do they?
Yeah.
Sweet. I didn't know because I had these from before, so. So for those of you who don't foil from the top down, how are you guys feeling about this right now?
I'm gonna try it.
You feeling jazzed up about it?
Yeah, just to try it, for sure.
Yeah, it felt really strange the first few times I did it. But now it's just like second nature, yeah. Right, I know. When they're in, you're just like, ah. Which, like, you know, to be honest, like, we do work in like a very like visual industry, right? So I feel like when someone's sitting there in the mirror looking at themselves with like a bunch of foils in, and like they're all nice and folded neatly and they're beautiful, I think you just feel a little bit better, you know? And for me, like I said, it's just the precision thing. I think I just get a little bit closer and a little bit tighter when I foil this way.
It makes so much sense that you're not pushing down on the foils underneath.
Yeah.
Because at one time, I tried to fold foils and do it the way that you're doing it, and I got so much bleeding. But
Yeah.
it's because I tried to do that technique, but still go from the bottom.
Pushing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the times that I do foil from the hairline, or yeah, from the hairline back, from the bottom up, I have to be so careful.
Rather than working side to side, would you ever just do it like a center wall?
I don't. I know that a lot of people do, and that's like totally cool if that's what you do. You know, because I do slice a lot, it's just a little bit harder for me to get the blend. And even if I am using like a weave instead of a slice, I just feel like I have to take them so fine so that I don't get like heavy highlights when they're going horizontal that way. Lots of people do them and they look great and that's amazing. I just don't know how to do that. They just never look good when I do it. It always just looks like a bit of a mess. So this is just what I do because this is just what works the best for me. Okay, so again, like we did on the other side, right? So her highlights are gonna fit in here. So we're probably gonna put 2 in there. See how that goes. Always just clean this up a little bit. And like a lot of times when you're doing this, you're like, how come I have one on the other side and two on this side to fill in? Because everyone's head shape is a little bit different, right? So this is all just about like what's gonna fill in the best. So again, I'm just kind of matching up to the highlights above it. This one I'm gonna, there's gonna be two in here, so I'm gonna do one lightener and one high lift. This is also a really good place to put a low light too. So what I like to do with low lights a lot is what I like to call a low light sandwich. So that's where you take a weave and then, so we've taken out a weave, hers is really fine, but then you're gonna include a tiny little bit of the hair right underneath that. So you almost have like a weave and a slice together. Then I would put the low light in here. And then without skipping out any hair, then I would take another section and I would weave this out. So what's gonna happen is you have your highlight and then you have the weave that's gonna come in between the highlight, and then you have a small like layer underneath it, like a sheet of low light, and then another highlight underneath. So they'll all just end up mixing together. So you don't run the risk of like maybe putting in too much. You know, if you just need like a little bit of highlight, or especially with the top, if you don't want it to look stripy at all, that's really good to go highlight, highlight together like that, and then skip, and then highlight, low light, skip, highlight like that. Does that make sense?
And so did you slice that low light, or did you do that low light?
So what it ends up being is a weave and a slice. So you're taking the weave that you've left out from the previous highlight, your like negative space, and then you're slicing straight across. So you're just including that with a little slice. Yeah?
Do you think your low light all the way down to the ends?
It depends. Usually I would say on a blonde, not often will I pull it all the way through the end, because you know they're already gun shy about getting a low light in the first place. Like when you even say low light, they're like, oh no, no, I don't like those. And you're like, okay, well, but you need them. So sometimes I don't even tell them I'm doing them. I didn't do that to you today, I would tell you. But you know, like they get like nervous about it. So when really you're just trying to create a little bit of depth so that the blonde actually seems blonder. So I'll usually do them like maybe about halfway down. If the hair is like super, super over highlighted and you are trying to create a more dimensional look, then I will bring maybe like half of them all the way down and then the other half like halfway, kind of stagger them a little bit. Another thing that you can do too is right in here is a good place to put a low light too. So you can take out this kind of like triangle section right around the ear. I know it seems crazy, but you can actually have this whole piece be a low light in here, because all this is going to do is it's going to sit behind lightness and sit in front of lightness, and lightness is going to come over top. So you're just going to get that depth right around the ear. And when you have this, like, you can leave out this bottom part, right? So even when they pull their hair up, it's not going to be like, hey, cool that you put that chunk in there, you know? It's just going to kind of be hidden in here. And especially when you're using kind of like triangle or diamond shapes, I feel like that's a nice way, because you have, it comes from nowhere and it expands and it disappears into nothing, you know? So if you are doing highlights and you are weaving everything, one thing that I discovered that I was like, cool, why didn't everyone tell me that before? So if you're constantly taking the same pickup, you're doing like 4 or 5 or whatever it is, what you want to be mindful of is when you get to this very last one here in the front, where you're taking it across and there's not as much hair, just try to stay out of that like autopilot where you're like, I'm taking 4, because you might not actually need to take 4 pieces out. You know what I mean? Because you have this whole section here and you're like, oh, I really just need to take a couple out, and then this whole piece here, because of the variance in the hairline, just kind of like try to visually look at it like, oh, okay, maybe I do need to take a few more, or maybe I need to take a few less. Because I found when I was like in autopilot, like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's like, okay, well, now I have this giant chunk in here where there's no hair being highlighted at all. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think the hairline is like the most important part. You can fly through the rest of it, but that like hairline and anything around the face, being super mindful of that.
How long does your highlight process for?
I usually process it the same as what I'm processing my lightner for. So usually my highlight sections are 35 minutes. Kind of like I think with color it usually goes the same. I know high lift will lift a little bit more depending on how long you leave it. I think it kind of usually stops after about 60 minutes or so, but I just let it go the same. Unless I was doing like an on-scalp application of like a global process of high lift, then that would totally depend on how much lift I was trying to get. Does that answer your question? Cool.
We use color and I find out I'm always scared to achieve anything less than the hour that it's set to process for. So I only ever highlight the first section I do, because I usually start at the top and just do the top section.
Yep.
And I won't highlight any other part of the head just because I'm nervous about not processing them.
Yeah.
Before my photos are ready.
So I think that, just kidding, this one instead. So I think where you might run into a little issue with high lift is if you are changing your developer and not leaving your sections on as long as what's in the front. That's where it might get a little tricky with high lift. So if that's the case, then I think like what you said, how you just use the high lift in the front and then you're not using it in the back, that's probably a safe thing to do. Because yeah, that is the problem with high lift, is like if it's only on for 15 or 20 minutes, it's like not quite enough. Because you get the lift, but you don't get the deposit. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
If you're putting it, you say you have to use it on those last pieces right around the hairline, which are finer, probably lift nicer.
Yeah, totally. And if you are going to use them just kind of in the front where their hair is a little bit finer, you can probably get away with not using one that's as strong either, right? So something that's ash or violet is going to have a little bit more control, but you got to be careful with that, because if you're using it on, baby fine hair and it's going to stay on for like 45, 50, 60 minutes, it's going to deposit a lot. So you might end up being a little bit darker around the front. So that's where like kind of switching it up and using like something neutral tone mixed in with something ash, like right around the hairline, will be good, so you don't have to worry about that too much.
Did you find
It's kind of a little bit of everything. Honestly, I feel like it just depends on the salon because, pardon me, there are salons where it's like all they do is balayage. That's it. They only balayage. And then like our salon, we were mostly like foil highlights, and then over the last couple years we did a lot more hair painting, but we don't do classic balayage. We just do like more hair painting. So our clients were sort of getting a combo. Which I'm really glad about because I feel like there is a time and a place for both. Always use your gloves when you're touching bleach. Don't be like me. Yeah, I feel like there's a time and a place for both, you know? So it's nice, I think, for us as stylists to have kind of both. Ugh, I hate saying, but in our toolbox. I always feel so dumb when I say it, but it is. So with the back, I'll show you that visually once I put this painting in, because then that'll be easier than me trying to explain it. I always start in the back. Yep. Because I rinse in sections, so pretty much no matter what I'm doing, I start in the back. Sometimes with like hair painting, I'll start in the front if that's the look that I'm going for, where I want more pop of color in the front and like barely anything in the back. Then that's when I'll start in the front. But for all this kind of like classic foiling that I do, just because I'm a rinser in sections, yeah, it's fine. I start in the back. Also, I do that too because of the fact that I don't change developer. That means if like the back needs to come off, then you can just rinse it. Or if it needs to stay on longer, you know, you have a little bit more control that way. Okay, so that is the whole thing. So what I would do is the back, if I was gonna do a full, I would put this diamond in and then I would just carry this all the way down the side of the head, just making sure that as I got to, I don't want you to see my tape-ins, but as I got to here, I'm just making sure that I'm following the angle of the hairline in here, so that I'm just keeping it as soft as possible. And then I would come in from this side here and drop this down and do the same thing on the other side, just make sure that I'm keeping everything following the hairline. And then, depending on their head shape, then you're just gonna fill in just a few, like in through here, whatever you need. Sometimes it's just like a skinny little guy. And so that's why you kind of want to like map it out first and be like, okay, if I'm going to follow this down, how much hair am I left in here? So maybe these two sections need to be a little bit narrower so you can get a third section in here. But pretty much everything still comes down like at an angle, because that way when it falls, it's just really soft. Yeah? Okay, so do you guys want to take pictures of this? They're like, I got a glaze last time. I'm like, don't you get one every time? It's just because it's a different word, you know? So. They're always like, but what's a glaze? I'm like, it's the same as a toner, it's just a different word. Yeah. I think sometimes people get a little like, or just in my experience, I've had people be like, about the toner, you know, but that's because you know that one time someone did a toner that didn't quite go the way they wanted it to, and so then they get a little gun shy about it. But a glaze, they're like, I love glazes. You're like, cool. Okay, so I'm just filling in now. So you can see, like, I mean, this is friggin' gorgeous. this almost doesn't really need much. She's got such a nice base that lifts so well, and because of those fine sections, there isn't a whole lot to like control. So in this scenario, I'm just gonna go to like more towards enhancing what she is lifted to, as opposed to trying to do too much to it. So I am gonna do a roots and ends glaze, just so you guys can see how I do that. And what I'm gonna be using on her root area is I'm doing some 8N and some 913, so natural, and then a bit of like a 9 beige. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I do want to shadow it in just a little bit. So as it's growing in and it's rinsing out, those two things are going to kind of happen at the same time, and it's going to keep it really soft. Sometimes I will go in with something like even deeper if I'm trying to create like a really strong root melt and make her almost feel like she's been like balayaged or painted. Sometimes I'll go like, she's a 6 and I'll go with a 7. So I think keeping it a little bit closer to the natural. You don't want to go quite to the natural because then you've just erased everything that you've done. Yeah.
How much ink did you put in?
I did equal parts. Yeah, so it's a pretty sheer color, and I'm using 15 volume, so it doesn't deposit super fast. It's like pretty sheer, so I don't have to worry about it like overtoning it all or grabbing too dark. And because I'm using natural and something that does have a tiny bit of gold in it, I'm not worried about it grabbing. Because I'm not controlling anything too strongly, I don't run the risk of an ashier tone kind of erasing everything. So if I were to put like, you know, a 9 ash on top of this, these super light pieces here, they're like almost gonna just disappear, even though it's only a 9, because they're just gonna take all that cool color and suck it up and hang on to it forever. You're like, cool, so in 3 weeks you'll see your highlights. Just because it deposits a little bit like slower. So I'll just have that control where I don't have to worry about it getting dark.
Is it L'Oreal?
Yes. So I'm just going to take her hairline out, and we're not going to put a root glaze on that because I want to keep her nice and bright around the front. What you can do though is, you know, sometimes how you see that look where it's like really bright, but there's still that like shadow that comes down. So with that, what I like to do is I'll just comb this forward here like this, and apply that root shadow just to this top surface here. So you'll get most of the color on the top here, but then when she blow dries it away from the face, you'll still get the brightness that's like underneath, right? So you'll only be applying the root, will only end up on like this much of the front here and kind of extended further back here. So you can get that kind of like real pop. Oh yeah. I like don't know how to be like normal and professional. I just have to be weird. I don't know. Brushes. An integral part of putting on a glaze is having some brushes. And everyone here always wears gloves when they do this, right? Mm-hmm. Because we don't want to get contact dermatitis and not be able to do hair, right? Right. Blue is the, okay, thank you. Okay. So I'm going to bring this a bit further down in the back. And then I'll have it come up kind of angled through the side here, so she'll sort of get that gradation of light to dark. Not dark, but you know what I mean. Shadowed to not shadowed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So for this, I'm just going to the rounds because I'm just trying to create this like little bit of shadow, but I still want the brightness to kind of come out from underneath. So I'm just doing to the rounds. And also because I didn't, because I did a half on her, I didn't highlight all this stuff underneath, so I'm just leaving it. And this is where I was kind of talking earlier about if she had a side part and I had still highlighted her down the center, this is where I would put her into the parting that she normally has, and then I would match the root melt so that it was even on either side. I always glaze at the chair because it's nice to leave the sink free for people who need to do things. Also because my torso is freakishly long and it's really hard for me to do anything at the sink. And I'm just going to tap it in here, just so that that kind of helps make this pop just a little bit more. So then the ends, I am doing 10-1-3, so that's like a 10 beige.
Still with 15?
Yeah. because I assume everyone here has places to go and things to do. Also, she seriously has the best hair to use for glass because it's like the greatest density. It's like not too thick, it's not too thin. It's like the texture is great. Yeah. I know. I was like, can you just be my model forever? Do you guys usually do like bowl and brush, or you do like bottles with your glazes? Yeah. I feel like I do a lot of bowl and brush now because I feel like I do so many like roots and end glazes that you kind of have to.
I use the bottle for the ends.
Yeah,
Faster, but
yeah. Do you use L'Oreal or no? You use something different?
L'Oreal, yeah.
I cannot get a handle on using the demis in the bottle. Like for some reason, I just can't make it work. I don't know. I'm doing something wrong, I think.
Helps me be faster like you are. Let's go across the street to show you.
Oh, wait, are you a craft?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you guys, is one of you Ali or no, she's not here?
Allie's not here.
Okay.
We would've, yeah.
So twice now, I've had people go there thinking that that was where I work. So once was my roommate came to pick something up, like this was just before I moved in with her. She was coming to pick up some shampoo from me. And she was like, hey, I'm gonna come. And I was like, cool, I'm done for the day, but like I'll wait for you. And she's like, okay. She like comes in like in a, like, oh my God. I was like, what happened? She's like, oh, well, I didn't know that it was here. It was across the street. And I went in and I was like, oh, I'm here for Ali. And they're like, she's gone. They're like, I just talked to her. So she said she was gonna wait for me. They're like, no. She's like, she went home. And she was like, I literally just talked to her. And they were like, okay, maybe you're looking for a different Ali then? She was like, oh yeah, okay. And then that happened to a client of mine too. Like, I'm here for Ali. They're like, nope, she's not here today. I'm like, what? So if I'm doing like quite a bit darker root melt into quite a bit lighter, I will usually take a little bit longer because I'm being more precise, but because these are only like off by a little bit, you don't have to be as crazy with your application. It might budget like a tiny bit, but it's only going to be on for a few minutes. And it's an acidic color that I'm using on her. So it's not going to lift it at all.
I feel like L'Oreal Fifty Volume is different than other, here, it doesn't, I never had it from the base before.
Yeah. have to say, definitely being a chair renter now, I have become really careful about how much color I use on people. I feel like I was pretty good at like not wasting color before, but now that I pay for it, definitely try and not overmix. Do you guys ever use like just clear on something, like after you've done highlights? I feel like there's like now and then you'll get one where you're like, you're looking at it, you towel dry it, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go mix up your glaze, I'll be right back. And you're like, I don't know what to do. Because it's like, it's good sometimes, you know? But I like to still just put clear because I feel like it just kind of helps smooth the cuticle down. It makes it really, really shiny. What is this brush? This is a Tangle Teaser. This is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. It's the Tangle Teaser. So this is like so awesome. I have never, this even detangles better than like the wet brush does. Love the wet brush. This thing is amazing. Especially for like working glaze through. It's awesome. It was gifted to me by a coworker. No, here. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly where it came from, but if you see one, just buy it, because it's the best. And then buy a second one and let me know, and then I'll buy it off of you. Yeah, just to make sure I've saturated, and it just feels nice when it's like the glaze is on it. And like, what else are we supposed to do for 5 minutes while we're waiting for the glaze to process?
Would you brush it through if you root shape was darker?
I probably like, I might use a wide tooth comb rather than this, and I would just do like one quick, like just sort of like flick through with it. Because that's when I'm doing something that's quite a bit darker, I try to be super careful like with my application, and I do a lot of the like the blending like this, you know, in between two fingers so that you blend it really, really well. But then with the ends, for sure, you can like comb that through.
Do you have one of those fancy ones? I don't remember them. Instagram, the Wow brush or yeah.
I don't even know what that is. What? There's something called the Wow.
It's supposed to, like, when you brush it through, it's supposed to like not hold on to the product, so you can go back.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's like a little
It has,
roller at the top.
right? I haven't actually used it, but I've seen someone use it.
Oh, like, so it's like has wider teeth and it's like a bigger comb,
Yeah,
right?
it's like
Yeah.
Roller, and where the spine is, there's a roller.
Uh-huh.
It kind of pops.
I feel like I like saw that back in the day. I feel like sometimes you see the stuff and you're like, this is just kind of like fashion. It's like, it's come back around. You're like, I remember some old school colorists using something like that before. I was like, what are you doing? But now it's on Instagram, so it's like, I want one of those. Okay, a couple more minutes. So I'm just gonna grab my blow dryer. Oh, there's a cord plug in there.
Yeah, you can set up 2 blow dryers so you
Okay.
can air dry faster.
Yeah, sure.
lecture out so you can like answer questions or whatever?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Do you want to rinse her for me? That's good. Yeah, looks great. Okay, so she's gonna get rinsed and conditioned. So how are you guys feeling about this? Good. Pretty good? Do you have any burning questions about what's going on? Everyone's gonna go back to the salon and try this. Everyone's gonna tag me in your beautiful, crisp foiling pictures.
So say if you didn't, like when you're glazing at the end, say if you didn't crochet, are you gonna have two parts of lines on the top depending on where they part?
Because this, like the subsections are so fine, I just feel like it doesn't really matter where it parts. You will get a little bit more, if you have foiled down the center, you will get a little bit more definition if they do go on to a side parting. However, I never find it to be like stripy, and that's just because there's like the angles that are in it, because everything's done at a diagonal. So even if you have a slice across here and you're parting it here, because it's coming at an angle, the way that it's falling is not exactly the same over the round of the head. Whereas if you did it if you did it horizontal down like this and then parted it, it would be like, woo, really strong. Yeah. I just find that it doesn't deposit as fast. So I'm not trying to like super darken her base. I just want like a little shadow. So for me, I just find if I use, in this scenario, if I use 9, by the time I get to putting everything through the ends, then it's almost like ready to be rinsed, but I want the ends to sit for longer. I'm also not a trained L'Oreal colorist, so these are just the things that I've done, that I've seen, and how I've interpreted them. So.
Carolina, do you use L'Oreal?
Yeah, we use it the old salon.
Okay.
Yeah. I used to feel like your chest. I'm just scared of 15 ball, man.
Once I started trying a 15 mil, it was like the greatest thing ever. Because I found that, you know when you want those ends to be like, you want them to be bright, and like those clients that want like the white ends, but I found that when I was using 9 ball, it would just like suck it up really fast, and like you're applying one side and like getting to the other, and this side has already gone like gray or ashy. Yeah, and so
Yeah.
the 15, it's almost like it makes it a little bit more translucent, and I feel like it doesn't just like suck in all the pigment.
And no hot roots.
No. Yeah.
The only time I've gotten hot roots is if I've used Richesse.
Yeah.
But with the light,
With the Dia light.
yeah. Yeah, I've never. I made that mistake in the beginning. I didn't understand the difference between Richesse and light, and I was just like, yeah, root glaze with Richesse, and I rinsed off, and I was like, oh, cool, it's warm, because it broke her base. So how you get that with slicing, you know?
What highlight did you use?
I did equal parts of V and neutral with 40 volume.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. So it's like she still gets the depth coming through from underneath, but I think that also helps keep it like a little bit softer as it's growing out. Cool? Great. You haven't even seen it yet. We'll let you see it in just a minute. Okay, so yeah, that's that. Does anyone have any questions about this? Or any questions about anything? I probably can't answer philosophical questions about your life, but. All right, so thank you so much for coming. This, like I said this morning, I just love to teach. I think that sharing information is so vital to our industry, and I like seeing other salons coming together and being in the same room and kind of making some connections and stuff. I think you know, building up one person is building up the entire industry, you know. So thank you so, so much for being here. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.